capability to request a meeting with that office to share our opinions and our thoughts on the proposed changes. And anyone with legal standing can do that. So the state of Connecticut is planning to do that. And we strongly encourage, should you want to, our certified local governments to also request a meeting. Our federal partners are working around the clock on this. And right now, the biggest thing we can do is make a lot of noise and share our opinions on how harmful these proposed changes will be. I'm seeing some questions. It's okay, we'll get to those. So action steps, absolutely going to encourage you all to request a meeting with OIRA, and we will follow up or provide information during this time on how to do that. Letters to elected officials, state reps, our federal congressional delegation strongly encourage you to put comments out. The National Trust is encouraging an attempt to get 250,000 letters to elected officials as part of the effort to respond to this threat. And we here at SHPO are also taking a lot of action on this. We have elevated this. We're trying to get it elevated to the governor's office right now. We have notified our congressional delegation. We are working strongly with our federal preservation partners and also working with some state reps. Am I missing anything, Kathy? I'm trying to think what else we've done here. Put some information on the website, trying to share as much information as possible, and just making sure that everyone is as aware of the situation as possible. So I think I'll turn it over to Kathy to run through her slides right now. And then I'm seeing some questions in the chat, and then we can sort of jump in and have more of a conversation and get into those questions. So I will turn it over to Kathy. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. I really, other than preparing slides, did not prepare a whole lot of things to say, and I would prefer that this is a little bit more conversational. So I'm going to start sharing my screen so you can see the slides that I put together. Jonathan covered a lot of the things that I want to talk about, but I am particularly... Yeah, no, it's so good. I am sensitive to the idea that, like, if you as a CLG have not participated in the Section 106 process, it's hard to understand exactly what this looks like. And I think that there are probably federal agencies that are better at doing outreach than others. But technically, a federal agency should be reaching out to you every time. And it is because as a CLG, you are representing your local government in a lot of situations, and it is what allows you to be, and I apologize for using this very bureaucratic language that's, founded in these regulations. You're allowed to be a consulting party, and that's a very specific status within Section 106. You are not just the public, you are somebody who has to be consulted with. And so I think if you have ever received something, I know in particular, the Federal Highway Administration works through Connecticut Department of Transportation. You may have received letters about DOT-sponsored projects in your town, and you're given an opportunity to comment. And the reason for that is, as the State Historic Preservation Office, we don't know what is important in every municipality. And so this relationship of CLGs was created to basically share that very local knowledge you have all the way up and through to the federal agency directly. And, I try to tell people that these regulation changes are not actually about historic preservation. They're not even really about just the ballroom, although that's come up a lot. It's about what we fought to our independence for 250 years ago, which is local representation and national decision making. That we don't want a government far away from us telling us what is important to us and how we want to be governed. And that's a lot of what Section 106 regulations have been about. It is not a law that has criminal penalties. It's not a law that you do right or wrong. It is what is called a law of process, and consultation is at the basis of that process. So the only way the agency messes up, as it's currently written, is if they don't consult with the right people. And so since that becomes the cornerstone of this regulation. It is probably the piece of it that has gone to courts more frequently than anything else. And it is why that has what was targeted for removal, basically. So I think Jonathan went through a lot of these proposed changes. Um, and I think the biggest takeaway for you all is losing that voice within the process. And as I was saying, because you are representing your local governments within this process, you have this opportunity to speak now. So if you look at this timeline, and I stole this from the National Trust, where we are now is what's circled in blue. That's that Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs review. So the proposal to make these changes is in. They have to take into consideration how it affects federal budget. They also have to take into consideration how it may affect state or local government processes in budgeting. And the reason why the CLGs have a standing here is because it directly affects you as a municipal government entity. So let's say, for example, I was trying to think of like what if they force the budgetary concerns. One of the things that, we know about historic districts is they tend to have higher property values. So if you now cannot control what a federal government is doing in your historic district, it could destroy your property values. And in Connecticut, the primary tax base of every municipality is real estate. So if you're destroying real estate values by your actions, that's going to have a huge impact on your town. If your town engages in a lot of heritage tourism, and let's be clear, if a federal agency who's headquartered in Colorado does not understand what Mystic Bridge means to Mystic and thinks that, hey, we need a more efficient way, for transportation, we need to demolish it and start over again, how important it is to your tourism industry, they can make that decision because they're thousands of miles away from it and will not be having that local input at all on it. So those were the two ideas that came to me specifically that I thought about in terms of how it can affect your local economies. But I am certain that you can all think of more. I just wanted to put those out there. So right now, while we sit in that blue bubble, you are allowed to request these meetings, and that is not a guarantee that they will give it to you, but I definitely want you to be able to request it. If you are unable to get in, it's not the only opportunity for comment. If they go through and they pass, they will be published as a rulemaking decision, and the public will have 30 days to respond. So that's kind of that next square that we're moving to. So if you guys have that standing to request a meeting now, but if you don't get in, don't miss your opportunity in the next 30 days either. So I want to double down on that. Don't miss your opportunity to voice your opinion. Specifically for OIRA, and thank you, Jonathan, for putting that link in. The important thing that you're going to want to know for requesting that meeting is something called a RIN number. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's sort of in the very middle of the screenshot to the left. The
I
RIN
included it
number.
with the link, Kathy, as well.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. So you're going to want to reference that RIN number. And when you click through the links, it's simply going to ask, who are you representing? And you can select a day and time. And, sometimes I don't like to think of myself as a bureaucrat, but I think this is a situation where we're hoping bureaucracy can work in our favor and they will get so flooded with meeting requests that it'll cause the agency to reconsider what they're doing. So even if you don't feel like you have all the talking points, even if you're not entirely comfortable talking in public, please set up this appointment. And even if the only thing you do is get in front of them and say, hey, we want to have a voice in this decision making. We think that's important. We don't understand how somebody working for the mining industry located in Arizona is going to make decisions for our community. Even if you only put out those couple sentences, that's fine. One of the things that Jonathan and I have heard in our meetings with our national partners is that senators and congressmen are not hearing enough from the public about this. One of the things they've said is, well, where is the outcry? We're not hearing that anybody's upset about this. So we need to start doing this outcrying. Aura is a great place because you're one of the few entities that it's able to make these meetings. But to Jonathan's point, also reaching out to our governor, our attorney general, reaching out to your entire federal delegation. You can find all of those email addresses online. The only thing that's been recommended is, try not to use 1,000 signatures on one form letter, because each one of those are only counted as one signature at the end of the day. So if you can do individual letters, if you can slightly individualize them, that would all be helpful. And I've put together links, so we'll send this slide deck out later so you can have all these links. Our office really is not, we can't tell you what to do or say, even though we are implying a lot of it today. But what we can do is share with you what all of our national historic preservation partners are doing and saying. And some of these organizations have put together some great template letters on what you can say, and specific things to, like, if you're writing to a governor, you should say this. If you're writing to your attorney general, you should say this. If you're writing to your federal or local delegations, you're better off saying these things. So I highly recommend you check out these websites. I would say at the present time, probably the National Trust for Historic Preservation is putting together the best information in terms of how to do advocacy on this topic. So if you only have time to look at one of these websites, please go to the National Trust. And then the other thing that I've put together, just to help educate you all on the situation, or to even find quotes that you might want to use when you talk to people. I put together some of the press coverage. So these are probably some of the more widely cited articles right now from, respectable sources like the New York Times, NPR, CNN. So there's some of the big news stories that have been carried about it and carrying this topic. And I think they're helpful just because they've demonstrated a lot of perspective, and they've talked to people who've gotten at some of the nuances of all this. So that's all I had for slides, but I do want to answer this one question up front, which is providing a practical example. So is anybody on from Litchfield by any chance? I don't know if anybody is, but I'm going to use Litchfield as an example because they're a CLG, and so they're engaging in this right now. And I think most people are probably familiar with the Litchfield Green. I am sure most of the people on this phone call have greens that are important to their community. The Department of Transportation right now is planning some reconfiguring of the traffic flow there, and it's going to include a little bit potentially reconfiguring of the green, new stoplights, walk paths, everything that you can possibly imagine that's DOT does to improve traffic flow, whether it be pedestrian, vehicular, bicycles, or public transportation. And they have been, while our office has been providing some high-level generic comments, they have been mostly working with the Historic District Commission to identify not just, I mean, the historic importance of the green, I think is well known, but to understand how their community operates, how those traffic flows really work. And so they are working with the DOT to talk about, where the stoplight would best be put, where those crosswalks would best be put. Do we want heavy concrete sidewalks, or, could you put in a different type of material or curbing? Could we make improvements to this particular area that may not have shown up on any of your traffic flow studies? Or understanding, there was talk of rerouting a lot of traffic from outside the green. And I think the DOT didn't understand how that would have cumulative impacts for other neighborhoods. So, that is an example of how one particular historic district commission has been working very closely with an agency to take this Section 106 pause and manage the change that's being proposed, and potentially in the end ending up with a better project, and a project that serves the community better. I hope that helps as an example, but I think at this point I'm done talking, but happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thanks, Kathy. So people could either put things in the chat or raise your hand, and I think the three of us need to make sure we can see everything. There's like 30 people on this, and
Yeah, no worries.
I don't see everybody, so I don't think everybody sees everybody. So, or if nobody's talking, just chime right in.
Carol, I see your hand up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm using my mom's computer. So
Okay.
I'm Chris Hall. I'm from Weathersfield. I'm in the HDC
Hi, Chris.
there. One concern
I'm sorry,
I
which
have
HBC
is
are you with?
Weathersfield?
Weathersfield.
Weathersfield. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we just had a big fight over 5508.
Yep.
And it really exposed how our state and our state reps, local reps, who we emailed en masse about it, that bill eventually was turned down, but it
Mhm.
did show how it seemed like grant money trumped preservation in Connecticut. There's a real pattern there, because it took such a long, hard process to get even an opinion on 5508. And then there were a lot of non-answers. I don't know how you feel, because you work closer with people in Hartford about CLGs and HDCs being able to have a say in, town-owned properties. This is another level. If people feel that we can write letters and emails all we want, but if it falls on deaf ears, what's another step, or what are the people at the next level up, maybe federally, who are not just doing it to appease people, but will be messengers at a higher level? What do we do then? You have way more exposure to that than just the HDC sitting in a town hall having an opinion. It's a big problem in the state, I think.
Go ahead, Kathy.
That's
It
it.
looked like you were gonna.
Yeah, I listen. It Every day of doing 106 is an uphill climb. Every day of wanting to get somebody to care about what you care about is an uphill climb. But, and I think there was at least movement made with that proposed statute, where at least you're starting to get out in front of it. I don't think you can just throw up your hands and say, okay, well, we can't do anything. Because I think sometimes it's just finding the right ear and finding the right mechanism to move forward. And so I don't want you to be disheartened, and and I think that speaks to the absolute beauty of why our country has 300 million people in it, and we have a regulation on the books that says any person who's interested in that project has a voice and can raise it and can comment on it. And I think that's fantastic, and I hate the idea of losing that. So I think when you talk about being able to have local control over what the government is doing, that's exactly what this Section 106 regulation is about. I think we can talk offline about 5508 and some specific things there. I don't want to take away from this discussion, if that's okay. Unless anybody else on SHPO has something to add.
I can
Yeah, no, I was just
suggest
wondering
that the
what
problem
your
in
exposure
Weathersfield
was.
related to the fact that the legislation came from the local legislator, so the deaf ears were already plugged up. So you have to figure out a way to work around those guys. I spent some time there. It's been a while, but I know some of the tricks.
And I think as Kathy said, it's especially in the case of trying to get a meeting with OIRA, it's not so much, you know, how much you're going to say, it's just the few pithy points you're going to make, but that will represent to them, you know, more people that didn't make the meeting. It does represent, there's a critical mass, and I think at some point, you know, folks will understand that there is this sort of an outcry or you know, that right now Congress isn't seeing or hearing. So maybe don't overthink, just try to take your opportunity as best you can.
Hey, Mary, it's Elizabeth Boyce from Easton, Connecticut. If I could just ask, since we're probably the newest CLG in the state, maybe, what would you recommend for us to be working on now as we try and learn our way? What exactly we should be responsible for, and how we can best perhaps protect some things before such a changes are enacted?
That's a really good question, and that's sort of something we grapple with. If these proposed changes are enacted, not even your local regulations will protect your historic resources. I mean, there's sort of, I mean, right now, I don't think the federal government has to comply with local regulations. I think that's why this is really a dire situation, because I'm not sure what you could do to protect yourself against, I mean, I hate to sound like this, but to protect yourself against an undertaking, if we don't have this overarching federal law on the books. I don't know.
That's
Kathy,
a
have you
good point,
seen-
Mary, and it's one of the major issues with this whole situation is that this process was set up specifically to address not only the comments and the input of the locals, but also disagreements and disputes when they arose through this process. And this process, despite some flaws, works really well. And a vast majority of projects get through it fairly smoothly. So what they're trying to do by expediting and creating predictability is they're actually removing the only mechanism we currently have for settling those disputes and disagreements with locals or the states, whatever it may be. So I think they're going to find themselves with less predictability and potentially more legal challenges, because that will be the only remedy left to some of these parties, which is incredibly frustrating. And one of the other things I would say is I mentioned earlier writing to your federal representative or senator. And some people's initial reaction is, well, this is regulations. This isn't subject to the review of Congress. However, it is one of the primary challenges to these new regulations, as you can imagine, is they are completely incompatible with the language and the intent of the overarching National Historic Preservation Act. And what we're seeing simultaneously is that we understand there is an effort in Congress right now to rewrite the National Historic Preservation Act to line it up with these newly proposed regulations. So letters to your Congress, your representative, are important so that they are aware of that situation. And if we see changes to the National Historic Preservation Act, it will not justify, but permit or allow these regulations to exist. Another reason to make sure that you're writing to those representatives to express your concerns.
I'll just add one other thing, and Elizabeth, we don't know exactly where this is going to go 100%.
No.
there have been various versions of what we thought the changes were going to be. And so at the end of the day, we may come up with something that's rolled back a little bit. One of the things that they have mentioned time and again is that the regulations would only apply to properties that are listed on the National Register. Right now, we're able to consider properties that are eligible for listing. So, if you want to think about listing more properties on the National Register in your town, particularly the most important places, I would think about that. That could add an added layer of protection if they do roll back some of what's being proposed. The other thing that can happen too, and to Mary's point, you're not going to be able to override what the feds do, but maybe it's a good opportunity. A lot of federal money moves through state agencies, so Department of Housing, Department of Public Health, DOT. Maybe talking to the governor and your letters to him about potential ways that we can, as a state, protect these places when the federal funding is flowing through a state agency.
I think Kendall
I've-
has her hand up.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm representing the City of Stamford's Historic Preservation Advisory Commission. I guess I just wanted to talk maybe more about like communication across this whole network we've got going because we're all talking about how we can kind of align our message, but like, do you as SHPO have any expectations of us proactively communicating with you of like, hey, I reached out to, Governor Lamont and I reached out to, XYZ. Is that an expectation? Is that something that we want to talk about? Or are we just getting our marching orders and going?
I'll go first. Please don't interpret this as we're telling you to do, we're not mandating
No,
that you do this.
I understand that.
Yeah, no. Would we love to hear that you did that? Absolutely, because I think we want to know how that's going. Let us, if you're having success in reaching out to the administration in the state or congressional folks, that'd be great. Just let us know. I think we all can. The other municipalities might be able to tag on or follow from your experience or learn what works, what doesn't. So I think the more open we can keep communication amongst us all, the better, certainly. And we will try our hardest as this develops and as things move to communicate that all out to you through Mary. We'll work, obviously, Mary can share any information that we have. So I think, and Kathy or Mary, please jump in. I think the more open that we can communicate with our CLGs and the more information you can provide to us, the stronger we'll be, because we'll know how successful our local communities are being and also what challenges you may be coming up against. If you were to reach out to OIRA and they come back and say, no, we're not taking any requests from local governments, then we need to know that because you should absolutely have a right to do that. So I think that information exchange is important.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. I would love to know what kind of activity is going on and what kind of feedback you're getting. And also, we can be an ongoing resource with additional information, or as Jonathan just mentioned, if you hit a snag that really shouldn't be there, let us know and, we can help you through that.
And as far as the sort of not hearing the swell of outcry, I know that all of our other partners in other states are doing the exact same thing we're doing right now and reaching out to their communities and their partners. So I think people are still kind of just finding out about this. So I think as this moves forward and as we do more outreach and education, that swell will grow. And I think it can only help if we're bringing it to the attention of our leadership.
Jonathan, Beth, sorry. Is it,
Beth.
would it be helpful to CC you on letters? Is that allowed? Like, can we, no,
I don't. I think it's stronger if it's just coming from you guys. I don't want there to be any perception that, I don't know. What do you guys think, Kathy? I think it's stronger if it's just you guys.
Listen, there is part of me who says I only want it to be you guys because
Yeah.
this is your voice and you should be able to speak for yourself. And I think demonstrating that you're speaking for yourself is a good thing. But I also don't want it to be confused with, hey, we're copying Jonathan because he told us to
Right.
do this. So
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
Totally get it.
so, but if you want to shoot us an email and say, hey, we just sent a letter to
Yep, yep.
the governor
do that.
or whatever it may be separately,
Yep.
so we can see your text, that, I think that would be great.
Okay.
Because there may be an opportunity to share that language with another municipality that has a similar argument, or again, back to the just information sharing.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
One of our problems is this stuff is going on so many fronts.
Yep.
That I'm sure our sympathetic cadre of federal legislators are numb. And the real problem is, and I sometimes represent the other side of the political spectrum, but the congressional majority needs to develop some kind of testicular fortitude. They're not going to do it, but that's what they need. And I don't know how we get to them from a place like Connecticut. But if
I'm just going to say, and I totally understand what you're saying. Historic
Good.
preservation is,
I tried to be
it's-
polite.
still understood. It's a bipartisan issue. We have really benefited from support on both sides of the aisles.
Oh,
And
yeah.
to that same regard, right now, we are being scrutinized from both sides of the aisle. So this is definitely not a one side only issue. You know, we understand that Senator Whitehouse, over our neighbor in Rhode Island, is probably one of the senators who's working most vigorously on changes to the actual National Historic Preservation Act. And it is because in the past 10, 20 years, regulations, the word regulation has just gotten a bad rap. We all like clean air and clean water to drink. And just like we like keeping our historic places, I think these regulations have served us all well, but they've gotten bogged up with other very bureaucratic regulations that I think have been limiting in some ways to, what people might call economic success. And so once these regulations have ended up in that pot and you have a few large industries that have paid lobbyists, very good lobbyists, constantly saying, oh, you know what, it's this Section 106 regulation that's been holding up all the progress. We have time and again provided metrics, actual data about how this hasn't done it, but it's hard to compete against these lobbyists. And they have the ears of people on both sides of the aisle. So I don't want you to think, being in our blue state, that it's not going to make a difference, because it does.
We'll see. I already sent a brief missive to the senators and Representative Courtney when the AIA first came out with a warning of this. One of them responded through his staff, Mr. Blumenthal. Like I say, we'll see. I'm happy to do it again on behalf of the Vernon certified local government. I don't know if she's still on, but our planner, who's liaison to the commission, is on this call also. And do we have an outside time frame for this? As my commission meets in September again on the second Tuesday, and I'd like it to be an act of the commission that we do something.
Yeah, unfortunately, we understand that there's no set formal timeline with the OIRA process. They can sort of shut it down whenever they want to. So I guess our general recommendation is the sooner the better. I know people are still requesting meetings and they are being scheduled into September at this point, so that's a good sign. But like I said, our understanding is that they can end it at any point.
Mhm.
But again,
All right.
as Kathy mentioned, don't forget we'll also have that window of time if it's published in the Federal Register to submit comments as well.
Where
Yeah,
did
Chris.
go?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a public list of people who are supporting or not supporting these changes? So either we can contact a more appropriate person or, you know, someone who's more hands-on, actually involved in creating this whole situation?
Hmm.
That
The
way,
only-
that way our communications can be more effective if they're going.
Yeah,
through
well,
people that-
I think the only list of folks that we have right now that have voted one way or the other on this are the members of the council. I think more in general, we can just raise our voices to OIRA at the moment, and then our congressional delegation, and certainly state reps and the governor as well. I'm trying to think if there's, you know what? I believe people are sending comments to the advisory council as well. Is that your understanding, Kathy?
Yeah, and I think even on OIRA's website, it says, you can send your comments there directly.
Directly to the agency.
Mhm.
You know, as far as directly contacting the folks that have promulgated this, that would be the advisory council. I believe the OIRA comments do go to the ACHP as the agency pushing them forward, but I don't see any harm in directly reaching out to them as well or copying them on your. Actually, the OIRA is a in-person meeting. I apologize. So written comments to the ACHP might be a good follow-up.
Thanks.
Okay.
Not seeing any additional questions.
Yes. So, as Kathy said, we could send you her slide deck, which kind
Yeah.
of consolidates the information. And we got a little late start with the recording, but we do have that. I can either send it out or I can post it to our YouTube channel. I'm not sure what the permissions are. I don't know if we can share it with people outside the actual organization. I don't know.
I'm
That's
not sure.
a
It may be
technicality.
too large
Yeah.
of a file to email, so you're
Yeah.
probably better off posting it and
So
sending
I'll
the
just
link.
I'll just send the link to the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But obviously, please contact me or Jonathan or Kathy if you have any questions
Yeah.
or need information. And then again, I meant for those that came in a little bit later, August 27th, there is a webinar that the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions is giving on this topic.
Yeah, that'll be good.
And so if you did not get as a member of NAPC, we purchased memberships for all of the CLGs. And I think they're still good for a couple more months. We'll probably renew that. In any case, you should be getting emails with invitations to these webinars, and they're free and they're incredibly informative. But if you did not, let me know and I can add your name to the email list, because as an organizational member, it's unlimited, the number of folks that can take advantage. So
Yeah.
just, let me know.
Yeah, and just a final comment. This is all still developing, and we're not entirely sure what direction this is going to go in. So we here at SHPO are trying to digest the information as it comes to us and turn it around out to you guys as quickly as we can. But if you have any questions in the interim, or if you hear anything, or you just want to chat, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to talk about this with you and address any specific questions you may have. I think with that, we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all for
Thank
joining
you
us. We
so
really
much,
appreciate it.
everybody. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for taking the time.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. Thanks, Kathy.